Okay, welcome to our tutorials. I'm going to be demonstrating in these tutorials how to create this that you can see on the screen, which is the mug stand that we are going to be producing in Year 9 Timber for our project number 1. Now, just looking at this project, I'm going to identify a few things before we actually start the tutorial so you know some of the different skills that we're going to need to be working with. First thing, you'll see that I've got my components window over here on the right hand side, and if you don't have yours, you can click on window, click on the components menu, and it will show up. In the components, you'll see that I have 3 down here in the select section: 1 piece, 2 piece, and 3 piece. What this actually means is that I have designed each of my components to be a representation of each of the pieces of timber that we're going to be working with. Now, using components is one of the more advanced features that we use. You may not have come across this in Year 7 or Year 8 in SketchUp, so it's definitely something that we need to be using because it's very important when we do our orthographic drawings, which is something we'll work on later. It's also a great skill because it helps you remember when you're producing these projects in real life that you can't just pull timber out of nowhere. You have to start with one block of timber and then you join it to a second block of timber. So it's a little bit more realistic in that sense. The other benefit of working with components is you can just select a color, drag it on top of the component, the whole component colors incorrectly. So you'll also see when you're looking at these different components that this piece that I've got highlighted here and this now second piece that I've got highlighted, they're almost identical. The only difference is that this little rebate is actually opposite. One has it on the top, one has it in the middle. You'll also notice when you look at the final drawing that one of them needs to be turned around. So I'll show you how to use the rotate tool. You may also be able to see that at the corners have actually been smoothed off in what we call a chamfer. So I'll show you how to do a chamfer as well. And you may also see that we've got these dowels here going through at a 30-degree angle. And that's going to be quite a tricky step for us to do. So it's really important you don't rush ahead when we get to that point because you may find that you have to go backwards anyway. Again, we've got a chamfer on the top of this center post. Other than that, it's a simple project. It should only take us a couple of weeks to put together in the workshop. But a few different skills that we need to work on here in our drawings. So here we go. I'm going to delete these out. I'm going to start from scratch so you can follow along with me. So if you've got any projects that you need to delete, you can just select them and press the delete key on your keyboard. For you should be starting from scratch. So start a brand new SketchUp document. The first thing we're going to be drawing is this piece here. This is what I'm going to be calling part C, part B, and part A. So those names will be really important later on because they'll help you identify what we're working towards when I'm referring to things. So I'm going to start with part C. Now when we start in SketchUp, if we start a new drawing, you'll find that you've got these green, blue, and red axes. They help you identify length, height, and thickness, or length, height, and width, or length, height, and depth, depending exactly how you're drawing. So I'll tell you that our dimensions here are going to be 42 across this depth axis. We've got 200 along this length axis, and it's going to be 19 along the height axis. That's because we're going to be using timber that is 42 millimeters wide. It's going to be 19 millimeters thick, and we're going to cut it to be 200 millimeters long. So that's what we're going to start with today. So I'm just going to delete that out and I'm going to show you how to get started. First thing we're going to do is we're going to go into our camera menu and we're going to make sure that there is a tick next to parallel projection. By default, SketchUp puts it on this perspective, which isn't really ideal for us. So just click on parallel projection and it will automatically tick on, and you can just check that by going back into the menu. The other thing that we want to do is we want to go to the standard view menu and have a look. You've got top view, bottom view, front view, back view, left, right, and ISO, which is isometric. We're going to start by working in the top view, which is view number 1. And you should be able to see on your screen the green line pointing up and down and the red line left and right. So let's start with our rectangle tool. Our rectangle tool is right up here in our normal toolbar. And if you don't have the rectangle tool there, you can actually select the arrow next to it and change it from circle, polygon, rotated rectangle, whatever you like. We're going to be working with rectangle. We're going to locate this origin point, and you'll see that the mouse automatically snaps there for you. Click there once and move your project out. As you're moving it out, you're going to notice that down here in this right-hand box, you'll see the dimensions here. And those dimensions change as you move it around. Now, we actually want our dimensions to be very specific. We don't want to guess it. So rather than just try and find the dimensions that we want, it's actually going to be way quicker for us to type. So to do that, I'm going to type in that I want it to be 200 millimeters long. You'll see I've got 200 down in the dimension. Then I'm going to put a comma and a space. And then I'm going to write that I want it to be 42 millimeters wide. And I'm going to press enter. And there we go. I now have a rectangle that is 200 millimeters long, left and right, and 42 millimeters wide, top and bottom. Okay, and you can check that if you're not too sure. You can use the measuring tape. Click, and you'll see down the bottom it shows up as 200. Click, and you'll see down the bottom it now shows up as 42. Now you've now created a flat rectangle. It doesn't have any height though, so I'm going to change this to the isometric view. So you can go into the camera menu, you can go to standard views and select isometric view number 7, or if you like me, press the command key and the number 7, and you now get this nice isometric view. We now need to give this height. You should be used to extruding using this push-pull tool. So we're going to select push-pull. We're going to wait for those dots to appear within the rectangle. Click, and you can drag up or drag down, whichever you like. Again, we're going to drag up. We know that we want our timber to be 19 millimeters thick. Now, again, we could just keep dragging until we get it exactly 19, but it depends how much time you'd like to spend on this. The easiest way to do it is, again, while you've got it in this loose moment, just let go of the mouse, type in the number 19, you'll see that comes in distance, and press enter, and your piece of timber automatically goes directly to 19 millimeters in height. What you've now got on your screen is the start of part C. It's a plain block which we need to then show what are we actually going to be cutting out of this block. So we're going to now change to the front view. Now again, you can go to the camera menu, standard view, and select view number 3, which is front, or you can press command 3 to go to the front view. Now, depending on your project, it may be too zoomed in or too zoomed out for you to see. There is this tool here, the magnifying glass with the 3 arrows. If you click on that, it zooms it in to fill your screen, but it shouldn't ever cut any of your picture out. Now, we're now looking at the side of the timber. Now, I'm going to put this component over here and cancel that. Looking at the side of the timber, we've got 19 millimeters of height along the blue axis, and we've got 200 millimeters of length. What we need to do is we need to start by finding the center, because in the exact center of this piece of timber, we're going to need to cut out a bit of a rebate halving joint, okay, what we call a cross halving joint, okay, and it's very similar to a rebate. So we're going to find the center by firstly getting our measuring tape, measuring from one side to the other, and we should know that's 200. We're actually going to measure now only to 100 millimeters. And that's going to find us the center. When you measure from left to right and you locate the center, which is 100 millimeters, you now have this dotted line along the center, and that's really useful for us. We also know that with part C, we're going to be cutting out a rectangle around about there, along the top, directly in the center. But we can't just guess. We have to have it absolutely perfect or our parts aren't going to line up neatly. So we know that the cross halving joint is going to need to be cut out 42 millimeters wide from the center, which means half of that, 21 millimeters on the right, 21 millimeters on the left. So again, we're going to get our measuring tape. We're going to go to 21 on the left, 21 on the right. Okay. We're also going to go from the top and we're going to measure down exactly half of 19 millimeters. Now half of 19 millimeters should be 9.5. Okay, if you want to check that on your calculator, half of 19 millimeters is 9.5 millimeters. Which means we now need to go from this point to the top using our pencil tool, from this point to the top again using our pencil tool, and from this point to this point using our pencil tool. What we've now got is the start of our rebate joint. Let's change back to isometric view now, so Command 7, and you can now see that rectangle right there ready to go. If you've got that, you're in a good position. We're going to use the push-pull tool. We're going to highlight that new rectangle we've drawn. We're going to drag all the way to the end, as far as you can go, and you should see on edge show up, which means it's run out of timber or run out of block. Click the mouse, and you have now successfully cut out your rebate. If you want to use the rotate tool, you can have a look around. The next thing that we need to do is add the chamfers, which is the nice neat edging along the top corners, and that's a very simple thing for us to do again. We're going to go back to the front view, so Command 3. We're going to this time use our measuring tape and find 5 millimeters up and across. And again, just like when you're drawing, you can just move your measuring tape along a line and you can type in 5, enter, and it will automatically measure out a 5 millimeter section, and you can see those little pin drops appear. See those little pin drops there? They look like a little plus button, and that's the end of your 5 millimeters. Use the pencil tool to connect those together on both sides. Click to click. Now if we go back to our isometric view, fit our project in our screen, you'll see that we've got those triangles now. Again, using the push-pull tool, just need to drag those sections away. And now if we rotate around, we're pretty much done with part C. The only thing that we need to do, we're going to get rid of our measuring lines, so click and delete, wait for them to highlight blue. Measuring lines can sometimes get a little bit in the way. So we're going to and if you've accidentally deleted a line, you can just redraw it in, not a problem, and your project will go back to normal. So, almost done, but not yet. What we do need to do now is we need to select our whole component. So we're going to use this select tool, the black arrow, and we're going to draw a lasso, click and drag till you have a rectangle around the whole project. You can't have part of it, you have to have the whole thing. And you should see the whole thing now is covered in dots and has blue outlines. Once you've done that and you've got your whole project, again, you can't miss any part of it or it won't work here. We're going to right click and we're going to say make component. And that's how we tell SketchUp that this is one piece of our project. And you get to call it whatever you want, that's the definition. We're going to call it part C. And in the description, we can put anything you like. I'm going to write in radiata pine or radiata pine. That's the type of timber we're going to be using. And we're going to be using 42 millimeter by 19 millimeter timber. Select OK. And you'll now see, if you've got the component window open, you'll now see over here, we've got this new component has just arrived, part C. And if you click it, you can drag in lots of them. Okay, you can just keep creating them. Now, last but not least, you might want to give this a little bit of color. So you can select the color tool, your color menu should arrive, go down to timber and select a timber that you think is close to radiata pine, something that's nice and light in color. Remember, radiata pine is not very dark. Once you're happy, you can save your project. File, save as, and we'll call this part C, and save. Now, once you've got to this point, you've done one of your 3 components. The other component, part B, is very similar. It's just the exact opposite. I've just put a copy of part B onto the screen. You'll see it still has the chamfer on these corners. You'll see it still has a cross halving, only it's now at the bottom half, not the top half. So you could repeat those same steps. So go to the start of this video, repeat those same steps, just draw your rectangle at the bottom this time. And again, you're going to save this as a component by highlighting the whole thing. Make component, and you're going to call that one part B. Once you've got part B and part C in your components list, then you can start on the next part of the video.